Hey, we're back. This is exciting.
We're
Uh,
back.
the last two episodes, we've had two great guests, Ken Gibbs, Heidi Bianchi, and we talked about the TV industry and we talked about events. And these are things that you and I both have experience in. And I thought today, for today's episode, we would do a little bit of a deeper dive into our experience in both the TV industry. I don't want to just say television, the TV industry and events. And the first thing I think of is actually something that I benefited from as your younger brother and a nascent sports professional, which is, I'm going to throw you a curveball because it's different from what I set you up with. It's the EA Sports college football campus tour. And you were going to Michigan and Penn State. And I was actually supposed to go to Penn State with you, and I don't remember what happened. But I did go to Michigan. Maybe I did go to Penn State with you. Either way, I do remember the Michigan one because a dear friend of mine and a longtime colleague, Jason Katz, shout out to Jason Katz and Dave Stempler, his homie, they were both Michigan 99s. They were participants in the Michigan campus college football event. And Jason, like 6 months later after he graduated, would become a 16-year colleague of mine at Major League Baseball, which is just
Amazing.
really remarkable to think of. But that's events, that's branding, that's building awareness and audience in a non-digital age, I would say. I mean, it was digital, it was 1999. But in terms of...
We did some search campaigns on Alta Vista.
Come on.
Swear to God.
Can you talk about the creation of college campus events and what you saw as your customer base and how to reach them and how that helped you grow a brand like college football?
So I have to give some credit to a guy named Glenn Chin. And
Big ups to Glenn.
Glenn would make a great guest.
G Money, GC.
And then Randy Shoemaker, a gentleman named Scott Higgins, rest in peace, Scott, and Belief. So there are harebrained ideas that get picked up, and this is also the magic of being in person sometimes. So Glenn Chin and I had a meeting of the minds in a lot of different ways. And we would talk about things that we could do to connect meaningfully with our customer. And I was promoting the college football and college basketball video games prior to this latest iteration, prior to NIL, prior to a few lawsuits, or maybe in between a couple of lawsuits. And Glenn and I were talking about ways to connect meaningfully with college students. And we both reflected on a thing that the beer companies would do when drinking was legal when you were 18 or in between. And they would have representatives on campus who would go to the usually the Greek system locations and essentially make sure that you were carrying Anheuser-Busch product or you were carrying, Miller product. And it was a happy war with the reps who they'd have gear. They'd have like a Miller baseball hat and a t-shirt, and they would get you a big vinyl sign for your parties. And then they would sell you kegs of beer.
The signs, yes.
Signs, out of home, place-based, can't turn it off. And so we were talking about this beer rep concept, and could we, as Electronic Arts, have a meaningful relationship with leaders on college campuses who we would pay to promote EA Sports? And the two of us were like, yeah, we could totally do that. And then Glenn, being Glenn, starts to think about ways to partner market. So we had a relationship with Ecko Unlimited, an urban fashion brand. And Ecko Unlimited gave us uniforms, EA Sports uniforms, to put on a team that would go and play at these college campuses. So we went to, it was driven by the teams that we could play in basketball. So this is going to be a long story. Do you know that college basketball teams get exhibition games? Did you know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know
Yeah.
how many games they get before their season?
Well, I don't know in 1999, but Michigan played St. John's in 2025, and we played somebody else. I can't remember. Cincinnati. So we played two.
Okay. 2 exhibition games is what college basketball teams got in 1999. And they used to play Marathon Oil and Athletes in Action.
Yeah, the Christian group. Yes. Athletes in
Yes.
Action. Yeah.
And so, again, Glenn, being Glenn, was like, that Marathon Oil is just a branded team. Like, there's nothing that says that it couldn't be an EA Sports team instead of a Marathon Oil team. And we have these relationships with these college coaches from our work in making the college basketball video game. And we have access to AAU teams and coaches, and they could find us players. A guy named Darren Matsubara, if you remember Mats.
I do.
So we pieced together, and this is also, this was an education for me. I had come out of traditional advertising agency and landed myself in EA Sports. I had gone from multi-million-dollar advertising budgets where I'm advertising on national television and primetime TV and you name it. At that time, radio and TV and out of home. And this was, we have no money, but we have content. And so how can we leverage our content in a meaningful way with our audience? We talked about this too, Rob, audience development. So, and starting with what Heidi said to us last week about the why, like, why are you doing these things, right? So our why was, we want to be everywhere and everything to college kids because we know that they play our sports games, all of them, not just college basketball and college football. But my purview as a part, this was the other great thing about the EA Sports marketing team. We were a team. So regardless of what product you had, you wanted the team, the EA Sports team, to succeed. Yet, as a team member, there was also internal competition. So you also wanted to beat your team member to make the whole team better. So my purview, Glenn's purview was to do interesting things. And then what he was also good at was finding a willing participant who would think like he would and do crazy things with him and be a partner and say yes, and then figure out how to make it happen. So we decided that we could get college kids to be college reps on campus. And then we hired an agency to help us manage those reps. And then we put a college basketball team into 10 colleges. And that was not what you asked about, though. But that was part and parcel of EAU, a sub-brand, EAU, which also, by the way, was the name of our internship program for coders and artists and everything else. We made a logo. And then we did the 64 college campus tour that I think you're referring to.
64. You
64.
Did. Wow. Well, by the way, that laid the framework, whether you know it or not. Unintended consequences, or just happens to be a smart strategy for brands that need to be on college campuses. But Big Ten Network has college kids supporting their productions. IMG Endeavor, Learfield, all have college kids on campus from a marketing standpoint. So this speaks to what you were doing in the 90s.
Yeah, for sure. There's another guy, Brian Movelson, who was actually a
BMO.
spotter. Yeah, Bebo.
Yeah, for ABC and Brent Musburger, I believe,
Correct.
right?
You are 100% correct.
By the way, you
And
mentioned Randy, and I want to give Randy a big shout out. Shue, this side note, and we'll still get to the tournament. Side note, it's opening day in Cincinnati, 2000. The Reds are always the first game. They open with the Milwaukee Brewers. And what's special about this opening day in Cincinnati is that Ken Griffey Jr. has come home. He was traded in the offseason from Seattle to Cincinnati. He was 2 home runs away from 400 in his career, sitting on 398. And opening day was on Monday, the same day as Michigan State, Florida, the NCAA college basketball men's championship, was being played in Indianapolis, Indiana. Now, somehow, and I don't know if this has changed, you're going to have to fact check me. Indianapolis at that time was in the central time zone.
okay.
Because I was in Cincinnati
I
and
believe the reason for that, Rob, is that Indiana does not adhere to daylight savings.
I think they do now. I think this
Oh,
changed.
okay.
We're gonna have to ask our producer to look this up for us. And um, and you via Shue or Shue via you set me up with a ticket to the game if I could make it, if opening day ended in time. And guess what? There was a rain delay. There was a rain delay, and I'm pacing back and forth. By the way, this is only my second year at Major League Baseball. I am 23 years old, and I'm dreaming of going to this game. And I have to ask my boss, who's in the field with me, he brought me with him so he could mentor me, so he could show me the ropes. And I ask him if I can take his rental car and drive to Indianapolis to go to the championship game. As a 23, I mean, talk about like
Yeah, because you couldn't
chutzpah.
rent your own car.
I couldn't rent my own car. Plus, we're on a budget, obviously. And he's like, it's fine. I'll just do some work from the hotel room. You can take the car. They banged the game, which means they postponed it or canceled it after 6 innings.
And who could forget 2000 when Randy Marsh looked around and said, forget it. It came down in buckets, and the Reds and Brewers played to the only tie in opening day history.
And it was coming down. Steve Fortunato, much love to you. Forge, I appreciate you. Forge is like, here are the keys. Just drive you back to the hotel and you can be on your way. This is pre-cell phones. So the last word that got to me, or maybe we had cell phones, but unreliable.
No,
They
you
said
could trade voicemails,
the
but you
ticket
probably did have a feature phone.
the ticket will be at the CBS party. I went to the CBS party. It was wrapped up. Finito la musica. Nobody was at this party. So the next
I've been to
best,
that party. It's a good party.
I was at the game. What can I do? So then I will go to the hotel because I think that was like option two. If you can't find us at the party, go back to the hotel. So I go back to
Right.
their hotel, and the front desk was holding the ticket for me. And I got the ticket. I climbing. I mean, it's probably 2 rows from the HVAC, but there's Shue. Big smile. He's like, "You made it." I was like, "I made it." It's a great game. Michigan State, Florida was a great game.
Amazing.
Big
Is
ups
that
to the
Billy
EA
Donovan, or
crew.
is that before Billy
Pre
Donovan?
Billy Donovan. We'll have to look that up too.
Yeah, he was probably anyway. Yes, we did a lot of things like that, Rob.
Amazing.
And
I mean, there's so much that came out of that.
Four, yeah, walking around the Final Four with Dick Vitale and Digger Phelps was worth the price of admission. And it was an education in how college basketball at that time actually worked. And it was fascinating.
So that leads to, I think, what comes next. You were talking about, sponsoring your own team, I think is where we were getting to. Did you ever actually put a team together and play in exhibition games? And then let's talk about sponsoring actually the Elite Eight, preseason Elite Eight, which is where I initially was going to lead you down in the open until I thought about the college campus tour, because that was a really big event. That was a
Yeah.
big preseason event.
This is the genius again of programming, right? So there had been a tournament in Chicago that was a preseason tournament with some of the best teams from the previous year and predicted to be the best teams of the upcoming season. And ESPN created a wraparound with it, with the organizers at the United Center, called the Elite Eight. And EA, thanks to our agency at that time, OWNP, had negotiated with the ESPN reps, a gentleman who we might have join us at some point in time, Rick Hughes. So they had packaged up it as part of our overarching buy, the sponsorship of the Elite Eight tournament. And so that was a way for us to, again, be relevant. So the why, right? Why would EA sponsor a college basketball tournament? We had a college basketball video game, and we wanted to connect with our consumers in a meaningful way. Our consumers were generally male at that time, generally in that demographic at that time, leaking up older and down younger, but sweet spot was this demographic, and watching this type of programming. And so even though it was a little bit more expensive to be in an environment like this, environment matters. And the brand connection to your environment matters. And sometimes we lose sight of that with programmatic, where you could show up anywhere. But in this case, you're showing up in a sponsorship a situation. So you've got a premier brand placement. You have opportunities to connect with individuals who are part and parcel of the other sponsors. And here's another shout out to Jason Blake.
JB. Yes, sir.
So Jason Blake was the individual at ESPN who was responsible for us crazy clients and making sure we didn't do anything silly. And of course, we did a lot of silly things.
I was just going to say, are you sure he wasn't responsible for making sure you did do something silly?
So poor Jason used to chase me to try to get me to make sure I had, logos over to them and
oh god,
a back page ad to the program. And yeah, then when we showed up,
where are the assets?
He was there. Well, so
or the deliverables.
Which
one?
This story is going to go even like longer and longer and longer. So we show up, Glenn Chin and I show up in. We should really do this with Glenn, but anyway, or JB. But we show up in Chicago, and we try to check into the hotel room that ESPN had gotten for us, and they were sold out. And they were going to put us like across town. So
in the Excalibur?
I think no,
that was
like
one of the clubs
worse,
we went to, by the way.
Worse, I think we were at, we were staying somewhere in the Loop or somewhere close to maybe the United Center, which is south, right? And they were going to put us back up at like O'Hare, which is 45 minutes away. If you know Chicago, it's a long way away. And I've lived in Chicago for 4 years. I'm like, no way. Like, so Jason catches wind of this because he's the only number we have, because we call him and we're like, hey. And he's like, well, I could bring a cot into my room. Well, he's got me, Glenn Chin, and Brian Jackson, B-Jax. And so not only do we roll one cot in, we roll 3 cots into his small room. It was like wall-to-wall bed. And
oh my God.
He was like, he was going to give up his nice queen-size bed to the client. And we're like, don't worry about it. So we all got our own cots in his room and stayed the night until they found us a better hotel. But so that's getting into sponsorship of a premier placement and taking on-air media and what used to be, added value or negotiated value for an overarching buy, taking a premier position by paying a little bit more for that, sponsorship, having a media company create an event that has value, and then leveraging that collectively for everybody gets a good out of it, right? The fan gets a great game at the beginning of the season. We get a great placement opportunity in front of our fans and a way to connect one-to-one with people that go to the event. We get B-roll at the time and some photos of, being in location. There's shots of our logo on, SportsCenter because, you've got the best teams playing, and in the middle of the court is the EA Sports logo. So there's all this great stuff that's going on. We got a back page ad in the program, and I remember the brief to the agency. They came back with something completely unexpected and lovely. And this is what I love about agencies that are really good. Like, they took the brief and they said, we got a back page ad, and we could just give you like an ad, but they thought about the context of this thing. They're like, oh, you're in an arena with college students potentially. So we're going to make the ad like the signs that kids hold up, like Yo Ma, send money. And so the ad was essentially, Yo Ma, send me NCAA March Madness 99, the video game. And that was cute. And, a couple of people did hold it up and a camera caught it. And, that's the type of thinking that is beneficial and was exciting and interesting. But that idea of the creation of content and then content being interesting and valuable and creating value by doing something led us to Glenn suggesting that we could create a team. Me thinking that was the most brilliant idea in the world and wanting to be a part of it. And then, the work, which was then thinking through the details of how is it going to work? Who's going to be the coach? I think Al Adels, if you know that name, he was. I think he's also passed. I should probably check that
Al
before
Adels.
we say that.
August 2024, actually.
Yeah.
From Newark.
Great guy. And so he was one of the coaches.
Born in Newark. I just want to. I don't want to shortchange. But yeah. Went to Newark. Went to high school in Newark. And
there you go.
Amazing. Was down at North Carolina A&T State University. Yep. Yeah.
So we got a bunch of players who hadn't been picked up by the pros, but weren't ready to stop playing, and they had a chance to play professional basketball. Whether it was going to be in the NBA or not, we didn't know. But this being on the EA Sports team or being on one of these teams that would travel to the elite programs was a way for them to get another look. And so they could get airtime and they could be seen by coaches, and it was a chance for them to extend their career prior to NIL and things like that. So here was this team in a jersey, EA Sports jersey, playing like, University of Michigan, playing Duke. We had a long-standing relationship with Coach K because we used to have a Coach K basketball game at EA Sports. And we went to 10 campuses. And one of the great things about that as a marketing program is we got EA Sports at the top of every college basketball team's schedule, because they publish the schedules, right? And they publish them online, and they publish them in the paper, and every single schedule had us, EA Sports, at as one of the top two teams at the in the schedules for the top programs. So that was value for the brand there. And then we did this program where we had college ambassadors on the campuses where we had the team go. And then we did a raffle for a kid on campus to get to sit on the EA Sports team's bench when our team played their college team. They got a uniform and they got to sit on the bench. Like, how cool is that as a college kid to go play against, people that are going to be future pros that are playing college basketball at your university? So all that and all that thinking through of how to activate a sponsorship. And then the even better part of all this, if I haven't gone on too long, like it's a monologue, dude. Okay, so the even better part was Glenn comes to me one day after this had all been in motion, and we'd been, what were our expenses? We bought tickets, we paid the players, we paid the coach, had uniforms, had hotel rooms. Well, do you know what happens when you play a college basketball team at their stadium?
They pay you.
They pay you.
So it became a net positive.
Glenn's like, I got a check. And our accounting team doesn't know what the hell to do with it because marketing is an expense.
All I've been thinking about is like, oh, how are you measuring the performance of these activations?
Right. And so, we had lower ability to see, we still had a retail, like, in that environment, it was still retail sell through, right? So sell in and then sell through, right? Because our sales to people were awesome. They could sell in. But our job was to make sure that, one, they had an exciting marketing plan that would get the buyer at Walmart or the buyer at Target to buy a lot of our product. But once it was there, Target and Walmart needed us to create an excitement to get people to go into their stores to pull it off the shelf. And so it worked because they sold more basketball and football games than they had before. All this to be said, the product still has to be good at the end of the day. So, you could have the best marketing. If your product is terrible, it's not quite going to matter. If your product is good and your marketing is awesome, you can get away with some things. But we had a good product and great marketing. And Glenn and I got lauded as Guerrilla Marketer of the Year by I think by Ad Age. So it was interesting. It was fun. And it is still fun and interesting. One of the reasons I have an agency, Rob, is because I still like doing things that are fun and engaging for brands that actually work, right? It's a win-win-win. And I look for those win-win-wins when I can.
I think maybe it's nostalgia, which I understand can be a trap to be too nostalgic. But the idea that getting back to events and getting back to in real life and seeing people and being with people is underutilized as a marketing tactic presently. And that's only feels and vibe, right? I don't know if I should do some research and investigate the percent of spend on digital and paid media versus events and in person. I'm pretty sure I know what has a substantial amount more of money invested in it. But I'm wondering, since you do own a marketing agency, how you think about events, and is my feeling correct?
I'm going to approach this from a couple of ways. I think that you are right about the vibe that in-person and traditional media is undervalued and utilized by lots of brands because you can't measure the click as easily. It takes work. And it also takes planning. And I wrote a blog piece with a friend of mine from my Leo Burnett days, Barbara Gorder. Shout out to Barbara Gorder. We were talking about the fact that nobody plans anymore. Like, not realistically. I worked on Procter and Gamble when I was at Leo Burnett. It was, a lot of people think I have an MBA because of my thinking about stuff. The MBA was working at Leo Burnett, working with great people, working on Procter and Gamble. Like that was my MBA. And Procter and Gamble would plan like 18 months in advance. Could you imagine planning 18 months in advance? People don't plan 18 weeks in advance. They don't plan 18 minutes in advance because it's digital. I'll just play, I'll just throw some more at it. And it's gotten us to be lazy. And that's a problem. You can't do an event that fast. It doesn't work that way. I mean, some people can, but it's not the best.
Okay. So I want to call out the word lazy only because I would bet people would love to be more creative. I don't think they want to just say, set it and forget it. I think they want to work, but they want to be inspired. And so, running ads that, to your point, you can just set it and let it run, turn it off, and then switch the dollars somewhere else. And digital has given me these great measurement tools and the ability to do attribution better than maybe an event can, unless I'm selling product at the event and I can do kind of a 1-for-1. But I think people do want to be inspired. And we talk about time and breadth and space. And this feels like a good place for that conversation again. We're planning 18 months in advance means that we have to be patient. And marketers aren't always blessed with the gift of time, are they? There are expectations. There's revenue demands.
Yes. And.
Tell me.
So, there are revenue demands. There are expectations. Heidi talked about white space in events, actually, and you just talked about white space.
Yes. I love that.
So, and the time to think. And I, to your point, do people give people the time to think? So there's a give permission and take permission imbalance as well. There's expectation setting. And then there's, how were you taught to do things and that repeating itself? And then how do the people within the structure of the organization that you're working in do things? And so you just kind of fall into the same old. So there are moments where the white space can create an idea and opportunity. And I've been to a couple of people who are always like, you should put time in your calendar for deep thinking. And like you, I can't, everybody wants a piece of me. But I love what I do. And so I do have time where I'm like, oh my God, either I'm taking a walk, I'm taking a shower, I'm like, sitting at a desk somewhere in the morning eating breakfast, and I'll be like, oh, I've solved it. Because, actively thinking about it wasn't solving it, but taking a minute and taking a little time away, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have an idea. And then sometimes it's then about, can you structure, and you talk about storytelling, and we talked about storytelling. So you have to then be able to articulate your idea and sell your idea. And yes, does that take time? It does, but that's work. It's hard potentially, or it's different. Maybe it's not hard, it's different. And it takes thinking through the thing. I could buy, we by the way, never set and forget. Don't. So our team is actively managing the ads and looking at it like the Matrix.
Right.
It's like, oh, the Matrix moved today. But still, you're looking at the Matrix, and there are moments where if you just look at the Matrix all day, you do see stuff moving, but why it's moving, you don't always, to your point, you don't always give yourself the time to reflect on the why. And then develop a strategy around what you might be able to do as a bigger picture goal, bigger picture strategy, longer term impact, as opposed to the daily moving of budgets or ads or, tweaking this. I talk about, search engine marketing like gardening. It's like, clip a little here, add a little here, clip a little here, add a little here. Oh, put some fertilizer over there, and like, boom, you have a great campaign. But that moment is that moment of gardening, if you will, doesn't think about like, oh, well, there's an opportunity to actually do some large scale environmental design and, come in and actually like shake the thing up. So that's where planning comes into play, and where you need to take, if people won't give, the time to plan. And paradoxically, we talk about this all the time. Paradoxically, if you plan, it's actually easier to flex.
Yes. And I bet if you have a system of record too, it would make it easier for you to flex too.
Yes, we always like a good, strong system of record, Rob, because clean data means I have a baseline. And if I have a baseline and I add something to my mix, I can see, what pops out of my regression, or I can see that there's an influence on my metrics. And, brand and events have talk value, generate word of mouth, build beyond the click, and build into the why do people click, or why are people looking for your thing in the first place. And, we were talking about, a few of my colleagues and I were talking about the erosion of performance of a particular campaign. And we noted that they had stopped intentionally doing some broad reach marketing around a specific product. And, they didn't see the decline right away, but over time you see a decay. And that decay is based on, that's an awareness decay. And, awareness media is required to keep that up. And then another thing, as you will know from your system of record, is when you are able to put awareness into the mix over time, it can accelerate metrics in a lot of different capacities. We see a higher click-through rate because your brand is known. So if I see an ad and it's from a company that I am aware of, I might not know why I'm aware of it, but I'm aware of this brand, I am more willing to click on the ad for the thing that I am looking for because, oh, I've heard of that, whatever that is. The other way is that if I get a phone call, we used to joke about this. Like, I'll tell this story a different way. A guy, now I'm forgetting his name. Shue. What was the actor? Not Randy Shue.
Andrew.
Andy Shue. Andrew Shue. God, I should know Andrew Shue. He's a Dartmouth guy. So Andrew Shue called Leo Burnett and left a voicemail because Andrew Shue had a nonprofit that he was trying to generate interest and awareness about. And I think the nonprofit, if I remember correctly, was called Do Something, because he was trying to get young people to be active and engaged.
Wow.
But he left a voicemail, and he at the time was at the height of his powers. He was on 90210.
No, Melrose Place.
Melrose Place. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. He was on Melrose Place at the height of his awareness, and that voicemail message got passed around the entire office.
Steve Perry, by the way, side note, Steve Perry Journey.
Yeah.
Called Mark Kayafa.
Yeah.
In 2005, when the White Sox were using Don't Stop Believin' as their song. And even though Steve Perry's from the Bay, and the Giants, of course, adopted that, and they play When the Lights Go Down in the city. But Steve Perry called Mark Kayafa, left a voicemail, and sang the first verse and chorus of Don't Stop Believin' as the voicemail. And you want to talk about something getting passed around. He was like, you got to use my song for the World Series video.
Yeah. So here's a guy, famous, who's still hustling, who's still marketing himself.
I saw him at a
And
conference at a Digiday event because he's in publishing.
love it.
I
Yeah.
mean, his business has been around for a long time. Cafe Media.
Yeah.
It's not
Oh,
Cafe
that's
Media
him.
anymore. Yeah, it's Raptive.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, like exactly like what you're talking about, the capacity to create demand and interest, and then bring people in and along with you is very powerful. And if you have content and willingness, you can start to generate outsized returns. And that also is the reason I talked about Andrew Shue and calling is not only does it get passed around virally, but you're more willing to pick up the phone if your brand is known, right? So if I call you and say, hi, this is Munir from Nike, I have some questions I'd love to talk to you, you're going to call me back.
I am definitely going to call you back.
Right. So that matters because they have a brand. Whereas if I,
So we started this, and this will be for an episode down the road. EA's activation in live sporting events and in content aligned with the product that they were selling and the ethos of their brand. It is astonishing to me that Nike has never made a more concerted effort in content production. It blows my mind. In fact, I thought they should have their own D2C channel the way Apple TV Plus exists. It is mind-blowing to me that Nike never made that investment. And maybe you could tell me what I'm not thinking of, because it's probably very obvious to the people with the money. But
I have a couple of views on this, having also worked at MTV and actually from EA Sports. So we never got to the 64 college campus tour, which was Scott Higgins, but we'll get to that one day. But MTV had only they were very reticent to have a physical presence of their brand. Sorry, band. That's a slip. So they had the MTV Store downstairs in the office at 1515 Broadway, and they had a love-hate relationship with the store because it's a retail environment. And then the reason they had a love-hate relationship with it is for them, the brand was ethereal. It's not supposed to be hardened. And the second you build something, it calcifies the brand. And the whole idea of MTV was vibrancy and changing and ever evolving. And so the second you turned it into a physical venue, then it calcifies the brand, and it in their minds, it completely blew up the whole raison d'etre, if you will. Now, that didn't mean they didn't have tentpole events, because they did, right? They had the VMAs, they had the movie awards, they had spring break, and they had Rockin' New Year's, right? Iced Out New Year's. So 4 tentpoles for each quarter, like one for each quarter. And those were for show promotion. They were also a physical manifestation of the brand, but in a very finite area of time and in order to create content, right? So that was their reason for not having physical. Nike wants ubiquity of their product. And so the second they own a channel, what happens when you have a Adidas or you have a New Balance or what have you? Yeah. You lose your opportunity for ubiquity. I'm guessing. I don't know what
ESPN deals with this all the time, and the ESPN bias for the sports that they have rights to, even as something on the homepage where. This is a conversation in women's sports that we won't dive too deep into. But if something's performing really well on the site, but it's not necessarily a sport that they have rights to, it will be suppressed. And maybe not so much these days, but certainly in the past, that was absolutely the case. And when you were talking to MLB teams, oh my gosh, your SportsCenter anchor said this about my team. I'm not talking to you for months.
Right.
Oh, you have Sunday Night Baseball? I don't care.
Right.
Look how you covered us. Look at the news. You did this for exposure and clicks. I'm not talking to you. That happened
Right.
all the time.
Yeah.
The risk is probably not worth the reward.
It's a strategy thing, right? What's your strategy? Is your strategy to be they're is it going to get them closer to their why, which is to accelerate sports, right? And the power of competition. So if there was something in that world that would bring their mission forward, I think they'd consider it.
But even if films, like in my mind, I was thinking, who has the money in the capital and the reason to produce really slick sports
Yeah.
films?
Yeah. Well, they have actually dabbled that way. I think they've dabbled in sports production. I think if you look closely, they've dabbled in it.
Okay, just not from baseball.
Well,
Mm.
baseball.
I mean, they sunk a lot of money into junior. The junior campaigns were iconic in the
Yeah.
'90s. Vote for
Yeah.
vote
Here.
for yeah. Oh, you have the vote for Griffey Jr. bumper sticker. Look at that. That's not EA though.
No, I worked on the Nintendo ad account before I went to EA, which is one of the reasons I went to EA because I had video game experience and one of the
Hey,
game and sports video games at that. And Nintendo, as you know, they tried to buy all of the Seattle
Mariners.
Mariners, and there was a big backlash because at the time, the Japanese were not liked well coming out of the '80s, and through car manufacturing and all that. If you know, it's
Yeah,
it's been a long time, but
yeah,
that
yeah,
happened,
yeah.
and and they were buying the team to keep them in Seattle because they'd committed to Seattle as a point of their offices. And what people didn't realize about the culture of the Nintendo company is that they're very loyal and they believe in society and they believe in building up a network and environment around them that's very positive and self-fulfilling in a way that is like, we want the town that we live in to be good, and we have committed to being here, and so we weren't trying to buy the team to hurt anybody. We're trying to buy the team because we want the team to be in the town that we live in. And so what they did, they bought 49%, so they didn't get a controlling interest, but so that they could keep the team there. And the rest of the community said, okay, well, that's cool. So a minority shareholder, that's fine. And it says a lot about them as a company.
You know, it's interesting because I immediately think of Mayor Brandon Johnson in Chicago talking about corporations' responsibility to their community.
Yeah.
And you, in regards to the safety and employment of our citizens, have an obligation and a responsibility.
Yeah.
You are a partner in this with us.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that can be seen in the culture of Nintendo and their investment in Seattle. And it would be great to see that with more of our own corporations here.
Yeah. Well, it can be done. I mean, we do the same. We give to our time and energy to local charities and businesses because our office is in a community, and when people come to the office, we want to make sure that the community that they come into is a self and welcoming place. And so, whatever we can do to make sure that our community thrives is that, again, we see that as a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes better, like people are happier at work, people are doing better because they're in a location that is better. Hopefully their property values or what have you go up because, again, like it becomes self-reinforcing as opposed to negative. And
Sorry, I was going to say, and we'll probably should wrap it up on this, but you could tell by the way the PR directors interacted with you, what the ownership was like at a Major League Baseball team, and how the employees were treated and how they were paid and compensated and how they were invested in the community. And you would say, how come you're this way and this other person is that way? And, they would start sharing some stories, because it's not just personality. It's not just that this person is super cool. It's that they're treated well.
Right.
So what a joy to have this kind of deep dive into events, not so much the TV industry, although we touched on it a little bit. There's so much more to discuss there. But it's lovely to see you again, and excited for what's next.
I can't wait to cut this one up.
Good luck, brother. Peace.
See you soon.
Yo!